Sometimes things just don't go the way you want them to. And you find yourself 2 Red Bulls deep at 3 a.m. in the morning, bloodshot eyes staring at your screen. You lose. The 4th time tonight. Your troll of a friend, an entire 3 ranks above you, fat in his glory. You should have never done it. You should have never played rank. You'll certainly tell the rest of the squad that your skills are weak, and you'll get no props on this day. But it isn't your fault. The developers changed the meta last second. It isn't your fault. Your teammates are noobs. Your Wi-Fi is spotty. It isn't your fault. The other team is using cheats. It isn't right what this world does to good players. The only question now is, what are you gonna do about it? Welcome to Deep Thoughts While Gaming. I'm Chris Chappell. What makes a good civilization? That can be a controversial question these days, especially when the US president has referred to some places as shithole countries. Even suggesting that some cultures are better than others is likely to get someone to sick the Redditors on you. The answer is simple. Any culture that has female circumcision is not a good culture. Fortunately, we have a scientific way to test what objectively is the best civilization. It's called Age of Empires 2. Imagine you're but a child with the heart of a man, building civilizations, destroying villages, showing no mercy, ruling with an iron fist. The year is 1999, and you are playing the original Age of Empires 2. Slowly you progress, turning stone to brick, training soldiers, scouting, raiding. Hours turn into days, and days turn into months, months turn into years. And when the definitive edition comes out on November 14th, 2019, you feel you're ready. You scoff at the thought of these younger gamers beating you. Of course, your first game is ranked. You're a serious gamer, and you're ready to show everyone what you're made of on the world stage. But playing against bots is a bit different than real people. No matter how long you've been civilization crafting in your mind, you aren't gonna win if you try to play Mongols without using your ranged cavalry. Ranked players aren't here for the role play, and you're gonna find yourself with knights rushing you, your food lines being cut, and masters of the micro game beating you while doing their taxes at the same time. Every civilization is different, and there's no true one right way to play. But as in real life, when it comes to how best to build your civilization, being too creative may not be the best way to go about it. For example, in terms of the early game, historian Jared Diamond, in his book Guns, Germs, and Steel, argues that civilizations that rushed to Tier 2 first all had 3 elements in common: geographic luck, the transition from a hunter-gatherer society to an agricultural one, and technological innovation. Geographic luck can be seen in how early civilizations tend to be built around river valleys, which help facilitate transport, food production, and the health of the surrounding biome, demonstrating that chance, what side you start on the map, the conditions of your surroundings that you do not have control over, do play a factor in your eventual prosperity. The transition from hunter-gatherers to agricultural society was largely based on civilizations having access to animals they could domesticate. Using an ox to pull a plow certainly is better than doing it yourself, and also having access to farmable crops such as wheat, with a high likelihood to survive until harvest, and generally low requirements to grow. Ultimately, much like the early game of Age of Empires 2, you'll have to create some sort of system to maintain your population, while limiting the amount of effort necessary to do so, with the final element, technological advancement, perhaps being obvious, with even players of Age of Empires 1 knowing you never want to stop learning. And the Eastern Front in World War II proving that you can win a war with science. Jared Diamond's specific examples, though, include the development of early writing systems in metallurgy, which allowed for better communication, the creation of systems such as accounting, and the creation of advanced tools allowing civilizations to further industrialize. Those who oppose Jared Diamond's views may attack him from the perspective that there's too much emphasis on environmental determinism, and that he oversimplifies history to reach his desired end of creating a digestible narrative for why some civilizations formed where they did. Maybe they're right. However, even if you disagree with Jared Diamond's view, it would still be beneficial to have some sort of game plan in mind when you consider what your build order will be when the game starts. At the very least, it doesn't seem that 100% of the time, quote-unquote, advanced civilizations no longer view themselves as or act as hunter-gatherers, so looking for commonalities to understand what is beneficial to us across the board may not be a lost cause. But since I'm not a historian, maybe I'm not qualified to tell you what united all great civilizations in the past. Sandals. However, maybe I can at least comment on what I see being the ties that bind the current late-game meta together. Once everyone reaches the rocket age, what becomes the path forward? Ultimately asking the question, what leads to success in the modern age? Maybe even a better question being, what is success in the modern age? If you watch any of our other videos, you may find yourself realizing that people very much disagree with each other all day long. And not even money seems to give the impression that it can buy happiness anymore. Furthermore, the philosophies that are thought of as representative of this time in history would also point to a degree of confusion, with things like deconstruction, meta-philosophies, and post-human philosophy being the norm, all of which, in one sense or another, interact with ideas that the system around us have become too complex or corrupt for us to actually incorporate into our narratives of the world anymore. Whereas things like the Enlightenment in the United States also provided a pivot from established norms, but the philosophy as a whole offered a replacement in terms of values, edging more towards personal freedom. Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau then being deconstructionists in a sense, but more than 100 years before the term even existed, and viewing the challenge as a constructive pursuit, instead of perhaps the generalized stereotype that the philosophies of today are strictly destructive in relation to the systems they were conceived in. All of this is to say that if you take the confusion prevalent in the modern era as a feature of the game, and deconstructionist philosophy from the 1970s to now as a signpost of this phase, then the metagame we should all be playing now is to find something solid to stand on, as we face a future that is ultimately, especially with AI, more uncertain than it's ever been before, while traditional norms break down. That requires access to information, transparency, and a degree of freedom. Because with access to what is happening in all 50 states, we know that people are moving to Florida for a reason, whatever that may be. And likewise, with access to global information, we know that basically everyone relies on Taiwan, and South Korea to a much smaller degree, for our most advanced technology, and therefore may want to not lose access to that. But in other civilizations that are trying to currently navigate the late game, they may find that without giving people the ability to actually search for what's true, they certainly will have more trouble finding any version of success for their own civilization or for humanity as a whole. Maybe you can. However, in the current meta, it does seem that access to information is a requirement for continued growth, as the problems of the world are becoming greater than Mao Zedong's ghost can manage, and what got you out of the Stone Age may not be what's going to help you now. Especially when many would argue that it was another major player's trade strategy that helped you get here to begin with, and not your own high-powered unit micromanaging. All this is to say, you're gonna have to stop role-playing if you want to really play ranked, because you may have pissed off every other single country around you, and you're still trying to save face. Meanwhile, Mexico understands the meta enough to take advantage of it, and is looking to take back every ounce of progress you've made thus far. Thank you for watching Deep Thoughts While Gaming. And remember, if you find yourself confused in the late game, watch our video on Helldivers 2, and we'll remind you why democracy is the only solution. And don't forget to hit that join button to become a channel member.